You know, it occurred to me the other day that there's absolutely nobody in history who I'd be interested in meeting who would ever go to heaven. Ever. Better than food, man. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Clifford Lee Sargent. Great to see you as always. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for stopping by. Today's episode is brought to you by the Ridge Wallet. Are you tired of carrying around a piece of warped cattle skin near your backside that's causing you to turn into some sort of weird, hunched up, grotesque creature with back pain? Containing pictures of your dog and pictures of your ex and pictures of your dead dog and pictures of your dead ex? Are you tired of that? I would be. That's why you need a wallet that is as metal as Dante's Inferno. This is the most metal wallet I've ever owned. These are beautiful, sleek pieces of modern industrial design, very convenient, very easy to use, holds up to 12 cards plus room for cash on the back, cash clip there. They're just slightly bigger than your credit card and yet they're so strong and sturdy. It's not going to easily break. It's designed to fit into your front pocket. It's definitely freed up some much needed space. No additional back pain, and being as tall as I am, I have plenty of that already. This is the Damascus model. Look at that beautiful thing. Comes in this rad box. If you're an outdoorsman or an outdoorswoman, they also sell these awesome knives. Very cool. Carbon fiber handle, cool pattern, beautiful. It also has RFID blocking technology, so you can protect yourself from digital pickpockets. Those fucks. Treachery is the worst sin. We're going to talk about that. The durable material means this wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. You could drag it to hell and back. There's over 30 colors and styles to choose from, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium. If this wasn't enough to win you over, check out their 30,000 five-star reviews. In fact, the Rich team is so confident you'll like it that they'll let you test drive it for 45 days. You can send it back for a full refund if you don't love it. Get 10% off your order today by going to rich.com/betterthanfood and using the discount code betterthanfood. The link is below. Thanks a bunch. Let's talk about a book. This is going to be a really long one with many spoilers. There are so many things to discuss about the Inferno that I'm bound to miss tons of them. So get that coffee, it's time to talk about... Today is the Inferno, which is the first part of Dante Alighieri's The Divine Comedy. It was my first time reading it. First off, thank you very much to my friend and patron Julia, who recommended the John Chardy translation of Dante's Inferno. In a way, it was not unlike Virgil to Dante, guiding me in the right direction. So thank you. I have two other versions of Dante's Inferno. I've read neither. Had I not bought this version, the John Chardy translation with a ton of excellent explanatory footnotes, this read most certainly would have been even more hellish. This book is filled with references to poetry and myths, many of which I'm not familiar with. It just really helps to get the references. Okay, second thing, the Yale Lecture, which I found, which I've linked to below, by Giuseppe Mazzota, which I found on YouTube and was also sent to me by my friend and patron Jeff, thanks a bunch, was very helpful for understanding everything. Context, insight, meaning, all of it. It's hours and hours long. I haven't watched the whole thing, but I've definitely taken from it for this review. That's a great resource. I've linked to it below and I highly recommend it. And finally, my video editor, Emanuele, who himself is Italian, and whom you should hire if you need video editing services. As he said, in Italy, Dante has a similar status over there to Shakespeare for the English language. He said, we heavily studied the Divine Comedy in high school, and the text can be really tough to get through for its poetic language and medieval references. And he was wondering how it read in English translation. It's strange and still very difficult. That's my impression. It's a very strange terza rima scheme that Chardy's concocted, but impressive, of course, that he could do what he has. So the structure of this book, it's wonderful. First, Chardy gives a summary of the canto, or section, then the poem itself, his translation, followed by footnotes corresponding to the lines of the poem that need explanation at the end of each chapter. A simple, effective setup for a long, difficult poem. Not that long, but you know, kind of long. And whoever wins today is going to actually receive this version, the entire Divine Comedy. I'm just reviewing Inferno today, but of course then there's Purgatorio and Paradiso. By the way, Dante invented the terza rima, which is it means third rhyme. It's a style of poetry in 3 lines that the Inferno is written in. The ending word of the first line rhyming with the ending of the third. Not easy to translate, but amazingly here we are. Thanks again, John Chardy, himself an Italian poet who passed away, unfortunately, in 1986. I want to stress that if you are intimidated, don't be. Just read it once for pleasure. It really is, you know, it's kind of a research project in a way, you know, because you're really going through all kinds of history and myths and all sorts of stuff. But I mean, it is fun to read. It's very fun to read. Come back again to learn about the deep layers and the deep levels of hell another time. This is one to reread for a lifetime, I imagine. But really, I mean, if you have the stamina and the kind of gusto, if you have the vigor with which to tackle this the first time and get as much as you can out of it, that's the wisest use of your time, in my opinion. But if you don't have that much time to dedicate to a project like this, don't let that stop you and just, you know, take it in iterations, so to speak. While it can be a little obnoxious sometimes with all the references and stuff, it does inspire me to go back and read these myths and look further into what the story, the poem is composed of. There's absolutely no way I can get everything that's interesting about Dante's Inferno within like a 15-minute video. So I urge you to dig further into the pits of hell and to explore its region, its metaphors, and the significance of the damned for yourself. All right, so a little bit about Dante. Dante Alighieri, who every single one of you has heard his name, was an Italian poet who wrote this 3-part comedy referred to as the Divine Comedy, the parts being Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso, meaning hell, purgatory, and heaven, respectively. It was finished in the year 1320, which was a year before he died, at 56. Pretty young. It's referred to as the Divine Comedy, but he himself actually just named it commedia, comedy. It's not a comedy in the sense of what you or I might think of when we hear that term. Not funny, ha-ha, but rather the Inferno is part of a larger comedy. And by that, I mean a narrative poem with a happy ending. As the Google definition says, in fact referencing Dante's Divine Comedy, if you were to Google comedy origin. Rather, it's an epic poem, this long, twisting, strange story through the geography of hell. It's the story of Dante himself becoming lost in a dark wood, as the famous opening lines say, in the middle of his life at 35 approximately, or so they say, straying from the path, and then being guided by the poet Virgil through hell itself, Virgil being sent by Beatrice, who I believe was the love of Dante's life and an important figure in the Divine Comedy. But yeah, it's a journey through hell itself down to the center of the earth, where Satan lies trapped in ice before emerging to the other side of the world and then ascending to heaven, it seems. So the whole poem, the whole Divine Comedy is a journey from the bottom up, going all the way to hell first, and then working your way out of it. Now, while that's technically a spoiler, I mean, it just doesn't matter. There's so much in here. So while it's a moral tale and a political commentary, kind of a warning to, potentially damned souls, it's also kind of a freak show, a sadistic carnival of voyeuristic indulgence of suffering, as well as a story designed to, scare those who need it into behaving properly. Which, hey, was probably not unwarranted back there in the Middle Ages. I'm sure there was tons of bad behavior, from the top down, right? We're lucky to live in the era that we do, because good God. If you don't believe me, you ought to go watch a movie called Hard to Be a God. Yeah, you ought to sit through that. It's the best depiction of the Middle Ages that I've seen, although it's kind of a sci-fi. You'd have to, anyways, long story. Hard to Be a God. Check it out. And I believe the idea was that, at one point at least, the reception or belief was that this was actually something Dante witnessed and had survived to recount the tale, to warn others about the threat of their own damnation, what was in store for them should they continue to be sinners. Okay, so him and Virgil, they're going down to hell, and it's atmospheric, it's dark, it's super black metal. What would you call it? Evocative, beautiful, strange, doom-laden, Lasciate ogni speranza, voi che entrate. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. It's written on the gate of hell, right? I don't speak Italian. I'd love to be able to, though. So yeah, maps are included. It's like Berghain in Berlin. Except when you get to the bottom of Berghain, you get to see men. Well, if you've watched that scene from Cruising with Al Pacino, there's the dude with the... Anyways, it's just amazing even thinking about it, the Inferno. It's just an enormous work. It's divided into 9 levels in descending order. Limbo, lust, greed, anger, heresy, violence, fraud, and finally treachery. The 8th level, fraud, contains the Malbolge, I think, if I'm pronouncing that properly, which means evil ditches in Italian, subdivided into 10 bolgias, ditches, containing different sinners in each. At the beginning of various levels, all throughout hell, there are like monsters guarding certain places. Virgil has to help Dante get by because Dante is still alive. The figures in hell can tell that he's still alive. They're like, what's going on? There are monsters you might recognize from myths, like a Cerberus, the 3-headed dog, a centaur, demons with horns and wings. Dante comes across people he knows, famous corrupt Italian figures as well as the poet Ulysses from the Odyssey by Homer, whose dialogue, it's been speculated, may have influenced the character Lucifer from Paradise Lost, as John Milton undoubtedly was inspired by the Divine Comedy. It occurred to me the other day that there's absolutely nobody in history who I'd be interested in meeting who would ever go to heaven. Ever. The punishments of hell fit the crime in some sort of strange inverse or related manner. It's called contrapasso, each successive layer of hell of the damned, boasting more creative punishments, it seems. And Dante really displays a kind of satanic creative sadism in his punishment of the damned. I mean, plenty of people will argue with me and they'll be like, no, he's just punishing evil. It's like, yeah, well, man, like, you know, he seemed to have a lot of fun writing it. I'm just saying. Now must I sing new griefs and my verses strain to form the matter of the 20th canto of Canticle 1, the Canticle of Pain. My vantage point permitted a clear view of the depths of the pit below, a desolation, bathed with the tears of its tormented crew, who moved about the circle of the pit, at about the pace of a litany procession. Silent and weeping, they wound round and round it. And when I looked down from their faces, I saw that each of them was hideously distorted between the top of the chest and the lines of the jaw. For the face was reversed on the neck, and they came on, backwards, staring backwards at their loins. For to look before them was forbidden. Some time in the grip of a palsy may have been, distorted so, but never to my knowledge, nor do I believe the like was ever seen. Reader, so may God grant you to understand my poem and profit from it. Ask yourself how I could check my tears when near at hand. I saw the image of our humanity, distorted so that the tears that burst from their eyes ran down the cleft of their buttocks. Certainly, I wept. I leaned against the jagged face of a rock and wept so that my guide said, still like the other fools? There is no place for pity here. Who is more arrogant within his soul? Who is more impious than one who dares to sorrow at God's judgment? Like, Virgil is scolding him for weeping at the sight of people whose heads have been twisted around on their bodies. So, like, literally their tears are falling on their backsides and running through the crack of their ass, basically, as if you got that. And Dante's like, you know, overcome with emotion, like, my God, this is so horrifying. And Virgil's like, what's wrong with you? This is what God did. Can't you? It's God's judgment. It's his punishment, of course. He's almost like, nah, give him a kick, you know, fuck these people. I kind of like Virgil. Indeed, the entire book kind of gives off the impression of a vengeful catharsis for Dante, raging at his adversaries or those that he deems evil, dropping them in pits of pitch, boiling tar or resin or oil, while having demons raking them with hooks. And the language gets coarser, more crass, and vulgar the lower Dante descends. I enjoyed the complex attention to detail that Dante gives everything. It's a very, very intentional structure. You could study this for a lifetime. I'm sure there are people who have. Referring to Mazzota's lecture, one of the greatest things we can take away from the history of Dante is the lesson of his exile in 1302 on the false charge of grafting, which I actually had to look up. I had no idea what that meant, grafting. It means to make money by shady or dishonest means, which he vehemently denied. He was in politics and then he was exiled. But being exiled, it turned out to be a real asset for him, as it left him nonpartisan and enabled him to see certain things from above, right? To transcend partisan politics. Guelphs and Ghibellines, those were his sides, the warring factions back in the day. So we want to know about how the damned are tortured, don't we? Somebody recently told me this was like the most metal book ever. And to be sure, they are correct. And Dante doesn't skimp on the details. You have people immolated to various degrees, trapped upside down in holes in the ground, their feet sticking out. That's actually the image that graces the cover of this version. You see he's inspecting the feet in the ground. Again, people boiling in pitch, being ripped apart, then renewed magically, and then ripped apart again. Torn by the claws of demons. A character holds his own severed head up as it speaks. There's a character split down the middle with his entrails hanging out. People in giant vats of boiling shit. The forest of suicides, where those who kill themselves are now like grotesque trees that are ripped by harpies. There's no shortage of grim and gory details. Bertrand de Born in The Sowers of Discord, Circle 8, Bulgia 9. His head has been severed from his body. He's carrying it around, holding it out, and it starts speaking to Dante and Virgil. And this is what it says. Let me start with Dante witnessing this. I stayed to watch those broken instruments, and I saw a thing so strange I should not dare to mention it without more evidence, but that my own clear conscience strengthens me, that good companion that upholds a man within the armor of his purity. I saw it there, I seemed to see it still, a body without a head that moved along like all the others in that spew and spill. It held the severed head by its own hair, swinging it like a lantern in its hand, and the head looked at us and wept in its despair. It made itself a lamp of its own head. And they were two in one and one in two. How this can be, he knows who so commanded, God. And when it stood directly under us, it raised the head at arm's length toward our bridge, the better to be heard, and swaying thus, it cried, This is a body clutching his own severed head and putting it towards them. O living soul in this abyss, see what a sentence has been passed upon me, and search all hell for one to equal this. When you return to the world, remember me. I am Bertrand de Born, and it was I who set the young king on to mutiny. Son against father, father against son, as Achitophel set Absalom and David, and since I parted those who should be one, in duty and in love, I bear my brain, divided from its source within this trunk, and walk here where my evil turns to pain. An eye for an eye to all eternity. Thus is the law of hell observed in me. Oh, it's great. Which actually begs the question, who decided the punishment, Satan or God? I assume God, actually. And the most horrific moment in the book, actually, I mean, debatably, kind of a climactic moment, even more climactic than Satan himself, is a king feasting on the brains of an archbishop trapped in a frozen lake, or kind of a frozen tundra, right down at like as far down as you can get, like the worst crime, in the center of hell. And it's because this guy killed his own children by starving them to death. And so he's forever feasting on the brains of this archbishop. Buh. Maybe the brains, maybe the nape of the neck. It's like where the brain meets the nape of the neck, but I can't quite tell. The king starved his son and possibly may have eaten them. It's ambiguous. Intentionally, as Borges says, Jorge Luis Borges, who wrote 9 essays on the Inferno. Why 9? Guess. And Mazota agrees. So he's forever feasting on the archbishop with whom he worked in a traitorous plot. Yeah, it's a super influential book. I mean, it's really impressive as a whole creation. You know, this is what we think about when we think of hell. It's just so timeless. Not hell, the book. Well, maybe hell if you think it exists. Walking over a landscape formed by mountains, rivers, sometimes bodies, raining fire, flown downward on the back of this dragon man creature thing. Meeting the giants, like reminds me of Titans, sons of the earth, down near in the lower part of hell, Antaeus, and then finally Cocytus, which is this vast landscape of ice down in the center of the earth with souls trapped in the ice. The most sinful souls, the worst sinners ever. And then finally the enormous Satan himself, trapped in the ice at the center of the earth, where gravity pulls all sin with his beating wings, which are simultaneously trying to escape, but also freezing him into place further, making it colder. And Satan is forever devouring with his 3 heads, which is sort of the inverse of the Holy Trinity. Cassius, Brutus, the Romans who betrayed Caesar. And then the main head of Satan is devouring for eternity Judas, who of course betrayed Jesus. And treachery for Dante, this is Mazzota again, is the greatest sin, because it's an intentional and conscious nihilism, a total severing of any ties with humanity. It says, I'm above it all or below it all, it doesn't matter. I also learned that the medieval version of our man in the moon, you know, the phrase we have for the moon, the man in the moon, way back when, in Dante's time, they called it Cain with his bush of thorns. That's what they called the moon. That is the most metal thing I've ever heard. So better than food. Yeah, undoubtedly. It was magnificent. Now, the biggest comparison I can come up with, of course, would be Milton's Paradise Lost, which was directly influenced by this. An epic poem by John Milton. Not about hell so much as the fall of Lucifer and his transformation kind of into the king of hell, you know, the war in heaven, and his role in the expulsion of Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden. Great book, especially for Satan's lines. Because with him, you actually discover so many of the problems with humanity. He's the most interesting character, the most kind of conflicted, you know, thwarted ambition. There's plenty I haven't understood about Paradise Lost, and that's certainly definitely in need of a reread and re-review as well. And I'll most certainly be re-reviewing Dante's Inferno down the road to update and share what I've learned. It's an adventure story and an inner exploration. Sort of an encyclopedic construction of the many layers of hell. Perhaps one of the most impressive things about old works that have stood the test of time is their ability not to posit one fascinating creative idea, but many. Structure is huge in Dante's Inferno. The weight Dante places on the variety of sin corresponds directly to their location in hell. The worse the sin, the deeper down they are, until you're literally in the mouth of Satan for eternity, which I admit was actually just sort of humorous. It's like Virgil and Dante arrive and it's like, well, there he is. And Satan's just like blindly munching on Judas. So what did I dislike? I just think Dante could have gone further with Satan. Mazzota will disagree with me, but I don't care. Like that's what I believe, and it's the truth. He could have gone further with Satan. It's a creative flop. It's a miss. It was a real letdown. You know, I mean, you have all this build up, right? And then you have like the climax where like the king's feasting on the brains of the archbishop, and it's like, yeah, that's creepy and whatever. Okay, cool, yeah, no, and the story of the starvation, yeah, it's like super dark. But you really need, it's anticlimactic. It is. Without a doubt. In the end, the poets crawl down, Satan's hairy legs, and they emerge on the other side of Earth, eventually, climbing up through the center of the Earth back into the other side from where they started. And they make it out, they pull themselves to the surface, and they see the stars in the dawn just before Easter Sunday. I'm reviewing this just before Easter weekend, which was unintentional and kind of eerie. You could have had such a better climax. You could have had such a more interesting exchange. Why wouldn't there be an attempt of seduction on Satan's part, trying to pull Dante, into the realm of evil, as opposed to Virgil, who's like guided him the whole way and he's pulling him back, it's like kind of this tug of war, and Dante eventually goes good, He pulls himself together with his own free will and he chooses good. That'd be so much more interesting. Satan is the eternal source of all evil. I just thought with all these great previous dialogues from the damned, we could have at least heard something from the evil of all evil. But perhaps Dante didn't see it fit to give Satan any lines at all, for a very specific reason. What it is, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's a creative miss. Perhaps he thought he didn't deserve any lines. Mazzota said that Satan was actually there to be used as a tool to ascend to something higher, that evil can be exploited for good, basically. And he's silent because the angels are silent. They don't need human language to speak. They communicate through thought. And also because Satan in this case represents evil defeated. But apparently T.S. Eliot actually had my same complaint. And I stand with him. Satan should speak. We should have a realistic portrayal of evil trying to seduce us. Because it's much stronger for evil to be defeated through faith and rhetoric, in my opinion. I prefer Paradise Lost. It's just me. They're different though. If Dante's Inferno is the Hilliard Ensemble's collection of works by Pereton, then Paradise Lost is Verdi's Requiem. They're both amazing, they're just different. As far as a mode of instruction for those to avoid sin, I have to say the kind of violent contempt for the sinners, displayed in part by Dante as he causes even more suffering in one part to one of the sinners down below, was interesting. Something that seems very un-Christian nowadays. There's far less of an emphasis on forgiveness and compassion. Yeah, bizarre, very dark, very medieval, very grim, very intelligent, creative, and simultaneously grotesque and occasionally humorous. I was also asked by someone which of the damned I resonate with most. Admittedly, on first read, it would probably be Chiacco the Glutton. I certainly partake in all kinds of bacchanal feasts, which usually end in indigestion or hangovers, and apparently now damnation, simply for the joy of gluttony. Damn me to hell. So you should read it. Yeah, I think it's essential reading for everyone. It's a classic, one of the big ones. If you like Paradise Lost by John Milton, of course. And if you've read and enjoyed Paradise Lost and are interested in comparing the two, well, that could be interesting. Maybe a video on that one day? If you're interested in literature with any sort of biblical or satanic themes, this is definitely 101 material. Those who enjoy the poetry of William Blake, absolutely. Certainly if you've read Goethe's Faust as well, as it possesses a similar narrative construction. In Faust, Mephistopheles, who is not Satan, but kind of a lower henchman of hell, leads Faust through time, seeing the repercussions of sin, kind of in a Christmas Carol style. Dante's Inferno has also inspired tons of great art. The illustrations by Gustave Doré, who also did illustrations for Paradise Lost. They're iconic. Same with his Inferno ones. I highly recommend you check them out. Coffee time. For those of you who are new, welcome. Thank you for stopping by. I take the names of all the patrons on Patreon who have donated $5 or more per video to the show, and I place their names in this mason jar. For every review, I draw a name, and whoever's name I pull out, I send them a hard copy of the book I'm reviewing, plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly. I'm drinking an Ethiopian, and it's just fabulous. If you would like to help support the show, you can click on the link below and go to patreon.com/booksarebetterthanfood and donate $5 or more per video. That will get you in the jar. Or you can donate $1 or more per video, and you'll get access to the patron-only reviews, the Discord channel, and the Better Than Friday newsletter that I send out every Friday, which is just a list of 5 different things that I'm interested in at any given time. Could be books in the pipeline, music, articles, scenes from films, changes week to week, just various recommendations of stuff. If you think we have similar tastes, I think you'll get a lot of value out of that. Unfortunately, international shipping is not included. Sorry about that. Best of luck to all the patrons, and here we go. Who's going to get Dante's Inferno? The whole Divine Comedy, actually. Nils M. Thank you so much, Nils. Really appreciate it. You're going to receive The Divine Comedy by Dante, plus some delicious coffee. Hope you enjoy. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Please hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed this, and always remember, bring a book wherever you go, even to hell, especially to hell. Take care of yourselves. Have a good night. Talk to you soon. Ciao.